Alright, so today we're in part 3 of the bow build with my Elite Energy 35. So far we haven't built anything yet. We haven't installed anything or really configured anything. We've been going through measurements, which are critical. Today I want to begin to actually put this bow together. The next two things I'll be doing are installing my rest and then installing a D-loop. To do that today in this video, what we're going to look at is setting our rest height, and then also our knock height with the D-loop. This is a critical step and it can save a lot of time and tuning issues later on, so let's dive in. Alright, so I have my bow and my last chance archery press, and as you can see I've flipped the press over so it's in the vertical position. For what we're going to do today, you don't have to have a press. You could use a bow vise, or as we'll talk about in a little bit, you can do all of this handheld. But either a press or a vise that can hold the bow while you're working is going to make things much easier to accomplish. Okay, so the first thing I look at after I mount my rest, using a fall away of any type, whether that's limb driven, cable driven, etc., is making sure that I have clearance for my launcher arm to come all the way down. I want to make sure I have full clearance and that the full range of motion is not prevented by the fact that the arm is coming in contact with the riser shelf. You can see here I'm using a Trophy Taker Smackdown Pro. It's really not an issue with this rest because the launcher arm drops without coming in contact with the riser. It really kind of stays behind it. So that's the first step, is making sure if you're using a drop away that you begin to mount it with a height and a setting where you have full clearance. Now the hole that we use to mount our rest, the opposite side of that is actually a key reference point on the bow. A lot of guys will refer to that as the burger hole. And what we want to do now, we know we have clearance for our rest to fall. What we want to do now is get an arrow, and the arrow that we're going to use, and see how it intersects that burger hole on the opposite side of where the rest is mounted. Okay, so here's another close-up view, and this is a good example to see what I'm talking about. We just want to sort of begin to hold our arrow in place and see where the arrow falls in relation to the burger hole in the back. What we want to do is get our arrow to run through that burger hole. You can see right now I'm a bit on top of it. It's okay to be a little high, a little low. Not every bow wants to run directly through the center, but this is quite high. So what we want to do now, we know we have clearance, but we actually need to bring the whole rest a little bit lower and get this arrow running more parallel, more through the center of that burger hole. So that's what we'll do. Okay, so I just made my adjustments vertically with the rest, just still kind of eyeballing things, holding my arrow in place, trying to keep it level, and seeing how it intersects that burger button. As you can see, we actually don't see the burger button now. The arrow's running right through the center. That'll get us in a good starting position, and that's exactly what we're looking for. We've been talking about vertical this whole time. Now it's time to look at the horizontal. This is our center shot, and what we want to do is determine how far away from the riser our arrow is running with the way that this rest is set. Different bows like different things. I know that on this Elite I want to be about 13 sixteenths of an inch away from the riser, and that's measured from the inside of the riser to the center of the arrow shaft. This is almost right on. I'm going to put it just a hair more outside, and then we'll move on to the next step. We've done a lot of work to get our rest set, get it mounted, get the elevation as well as the windage in and out away from the riser set. Of course, all this is relative to how our arrow is mounted in the rear as well as at the rest. And so in this video, I'm not going to talk about continuing to set up this rest in terms of mounting and timing, and looking at the fall away mechanism. What we're going to do is talk about getting our knocking point in the rear set so that we can get our D-loop, then we'll finish our rest, and then we'll be ready to begin shooting. What we want to have happen is have our arrow be perfectly perpendicular from the string. We want it to be perfectly level, not kicked down in the back, kicked up in the back, but perfectly level. You can eyeball this for sure. You can take your best guess, but I found that it pays off to really start square, and it just saves you time in the end. One of the easiest ways to do this is with what's called a bow square. So what we can do is forget about our arrow for a second and use this square, which clips onto our string and into our rest. And so the way that this is mounted ensures that we are running perfectly perpendicular out with the vertical of our string. You might be able to see here, let me zoom in, that the bow square itself is even incremented. So here is our 0 mark, as you can see. So we're 0 at that point, and then you can begin to come up if you need to run an 1/8 high, for example, and it graduates all the way up. So what we would do if we want to run perfectly level is mark the rear of our string according to the scale on the back of our bow square, which again is mounted to be perpendicular from the string itself. Alright, so just to recap, we have mounted our rests. We have made sure that the launcher has full range of motion and isn't stopped by any means, any issues with clearance with it dropping. We have set the vertical height of our rest so that our arrow intersects the burger button. We have set the in and out of our rest, the center shot, according to the manufacturer's recommendations. And then we've come to the back and we've squared up so that our arrow comes out perfectly perpendicular with the string. The tape I have there, my nock needs to be just below that. So now I'm ready to tie my D-loop, and that will be the next video.